Hello, family, and welcome to Amazing Parents Network. I am the host of this show. My name is Ali Lankarani, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer. I'm a clinical neuroscientist, and I am very happy that you have taken the time to be here with us tonight. We have dozens of experts that are going to be presenting in the upcoming months. These are called the Family Education Series. Please invite your friends and family to come and benefit from the resources and the expertise that is going to be presented here. We're glad to have you here. We're glad to have our experts. Enjoy tonight's presenter. Thank you.
Aloha, beloved friends and family. I so love welcoming you with aloha, bursting with blessings of truth, humbleness, and divine love, light, and breath. If we haven't met before, my name's Timothy. Welcome to the 11th episode of Raising Brilliant, Healthy, and Happy Children from Womb to Independence. In each episode, a very special family and childhood expert joins me sharing their wisdom, love, and invaluable tips to help you unlock your and your children's full potential, nurture your bodies, minds, hearts, and souls, and shape your future success. And I'm so delighted that with us now to help us soar into our full potentials is Kelly Kashula. Kelly is an imaginative, creative, amazing children's book author, illustrator, book designer, and Brave Kids Books publishing director. She grew up in Gauteng, South Africa, where she found herself gravitating toward the arts of storytelling. Among other things, Kelly has created the Super Duper Secret Collection, a series of children's books following the secret adventures of little Lizzie, who encounters the mystical, magical, and marvelous worlds never before seen by kidkind until now. The collection started with I Caught One of Santa's Reindeer, followed by I Captured the Easter Bunny's Chicken, and she's just released I Discovered a Monster Under My Bed. Yes, we went from Santa Claus to the Easter Bunny to a monster under the bed. Kelly's also the mastermind behind Brave Kids, short stories to inspire our future world changers, volumes 1 and 2, published by Brave Healer Productions. Before Kelly shares about changing the world with children's stories, I'd like to share some of my favorite quotes about how children's stories change our inner and outer world. The brilliant Albert Einstein said, if you want your children to be brilliant, tell them fairy tales. If you want them to be very brilliant, tell them even more fairy tales. L.R. Nost says, fairy tales in childhood are stepping stones throughout life, leading the way through trouble and trial. They have the power to whisper one more time in the face of failure. And Strickland Gillian says, you may have tangible wealth untold, caskets of jewels and coffers of gold. Richer than I, you can never be. I had a mother who read to me. And Ray Bradbury tells us, you must lurk in libraries and climb the stacks like ladders to sniff books like perfumes and wear books like hats upon your crazy heads. And psychologist Richard Landis says, if we tell children what they should or shouldn't do, it doesn't have as much impact on them as a story, because a story builds in the experience. It's a way of teaching them about life. And Victor Hugo says, every syllable spelled out is a spark. And Yoda says, truly wonderful the mind of a child is. Extremely important dreams are. Do it you can't, unless imagine it you do. And Joseph Chilton Pearce, internationally acclaimed author, lecturer, and expert on child development, fills us in on this imagination, telling us once toddlers hear those magical words, once upon a time, their wide open eyes, riveted on the storyteller, see nothing without. Their seeing is entirely within, or within the creative process of the child's brain forms pictures, images that give reality, substance, and life to the vibratory stimulus of the words. This learned ability to create internal images is one of nature's highest achievements. The more imagination a child has, the more options he or she has for solving problems and being less violent. And Mr. Rogers said, our society is much more interested in information than wonder. And I feel we need a lot more wonder in our lives. And my guest, Kelly, is full of wonder, 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 and she sparks that wonder in me every time I'm with her. When I read her most recent book, I discovered a monster under my bed. Not only was I awed by the wonder in her words, but she laid them out like an adventurous path, a spectacular mosaic, and maybe she'll fill you in a little bit more about that. With all my love, welcome, Kelly. And where do you get all your wonder, passion, and creativity for writing, illustrating, and publishing children's stories?
Hi, Timothy. It's great to be here. Where do I get my passion from? Well, I think it's from my own spark. I think I've come to realize that the stories I need to tell are going to change the world and change the minds of kids and hopefully adults as well, because we adults tend to read the stories for the kids as well as for ourselves. So I think it's the mission to change the world.
So when you're writing a particular story, when you're in the process and the words are flowing out, do you actually think, oh, this might be someplace to put in something for a parent, you know? Or
No, I
how can I grab the parent?
no, I actually don't. When I write,
Ah,
it's kind of like some sort of magic happens. And
mm,
I am like taken to a world where my fingers have the words to say. And I like clock into this mystical muse that needs to tell the story. And then I always say that I am like the tool that I help whatever is trying to tell the story into human words and words that kids can understand and adults can understand. And then I
mm.
play with it. So I always consider myself the tool behind these awesome words, behind the muses.
Oh, wow, you described the process that goes through me when I write too. When you're doing that, do you need a once that process starts, like once you start writing a story, do you find yourself writing the whole story, or can you break it up in periods of time, or how much how much it's like when you get in that space where that's flowing through you, is there a
Yeah.
minimum amount of time you like to spend in it and let it flow out?
Well, I think the best thing for me as a writer is I've learned how I write. And when I get into it, it's I've learned what triggers me to get into it. And so it's these big earphones that kind of block out the sound, so it has to be completely silent. And then I'm into it. But what I've discovered is my process starts off with usually a title. I know what I'm going to write. Sometimes not a title, but with the Super Duper Secret Collection, it was a title. And then I go straight into research, and the research is fun. I get to go wherever the research takes me. If something's mentioned in the research, I tend to follow the lines, and I'm a pen and paper girl. So whatever research comes, I write it down and I do little doodles on the side. And then from the research, that is when I take the education that I've had in university and I sort of plan the whole story from the beginning to the end. I look at the arc, I look at the character development, I look at the plot. And then once I've done that, which is probably about 70%, 75% of the work, then only I get writing. And what usually happens is I write the story from the start to the finish, from page one to page end, and then I edit as I go. And that's where the magic happens. That's when, you know, the fingers take over, the muse takes over, the magic takes over. And this is all done in the silence of wherever I am. So if I have got the earphones on, I block the world out. If it's 6 a.m. in the morning, I write in the office. So that is actually a really fun part. And then what happens afterwards, as I go through my process, is sometimes these are little sparks that happen where I'm like, "Ooh, I didn't think of that." For instance, in the monster book, it happened when I was illustrating. There was an end picture where the monster, who's a really friendly guy, he blows bubbles through his pipe. And I just drew it because the pipe is very significant to me, because my granddad, when I was smaller, used to smoke a pipe. And, you know, I don't encourage smoking, but it has such meaning to me. So I'm like, oh, you can smoke bubbles. And so at the end of the picture, the character is blowing bubbles, which blows dreams into a child's imagination when they're sleeping. And it's like all the magic came together at that moment. I knew, okay, so this is why I drew a pipe. This is how it is coming into the story. And so that's when the magic happens. That's the whole process.
I can see you're enthused with the magic as much as I am when I'm writing.
Yeah.
These things just happen and appear. It's like, oh, wow, that's a cool surprise. And it's a surprise for me, too. So I know if it's a surprise for me, it's going to be well received on the other end.
Yeah.
And when you said research, are you talking about, do your stories blend like fantasy with reality? And is the research like the reality portions that you want to put in there?
Most definitely. When it came to when I did the Christmas book, I caught one of Santa's reindeer. I did a whole lot of research into Christmas and the man in red, and there was a poem that I kind of incorporated in the end. With I captured the Easter bunny's chicken. I wanted to delve deep into the traditions of Easter so that I can actually incorporate it into the story. For example, we use you know, Good Friday, then there's a Easter Sunday, Easter Monday. And so I kind of played with it, and I looked at all the different Easter traditions around the world and incorporated them into what I call the Easter egg deliverers, because everywhere around the world you have different mascots. It's not just the Easter bunny, you know, there's a Easter cuckoo, there's uh, what else there's a whole bunch. And then for the monster book is there came a line, I discovered a monster under my bed. Oh yes, it's true, he told me himself that he came from Timbuktu. And it just happened one day. I was walking and I got that line, so I wrote it down. And so I went and I researched a whole bunch of what is Timbuktu, where is it, a little bit about their history, and I tried to incorporate that into the story as well. And then I infused it into the character.
I absolutely, I feel like I found my twin flame, my twin soul writing in a female version, because that's a lot of what I do in writing some of the stories that blend educational portions in. I sit down and do all the research about, like I did panda bears. So I did all the research on panda bears before I started writing the story. I love that.
Yeah. I think it's
It's-
very key. I think it gives the story a certain magic that we can't just get from users.
exactly. And since you mentioned the monster a moment ago, I can't describe what you did in laying that out. Maybe you could just give people a visual picture of what you did, because I had so much fun turning pages, trying to follow the words and everything like that. That was as much fun as, reading the words.
Yeah, yeah. The whole point of I discovered a monster under my bed is to allow kids and parents to rediscover reading again, to rediscover going into the world of imagination and words and how words can play with us. And I even put little Easter eggs into the book. And so there are books in this book that the character Little Lizzie discovers. For example, Alice in Wonderland is very prominent in the book. Then there's elements of Hansel and Gretel, Pippi Longstockings, Pollyanna. And so they're all infused in this. And at the end of the book, I actually have a picture of the book titles that I've used in terms of Easter eggs. And it's so that you can discover these worlds that, we discovered as kids and made us fall in love with story and how the story actually changed our worlds. And the monster under bed is also to allow you to not be afraid, to not be afraid of adventure, to not be afraid of stepping outside your comfort zone, and to follow the monster, because the monster is actually you inside. And when you follow the monster and you meet him, he's actually the friendliest guy, and he's going to take you on this adventure, which is the journey, because life is the journey. It's not the destination we're looking for, it's the journey.
Mm. So is that the magic of how stories change the world, is by changing and getting children and adults to change themselves, look within themselves and become the magic they are, and they take that magic out into the world?
Oh, most definitely. Think about the stories in your own life when you were a kid and how they have influenced you. For example, you can go on you became a writer and you created these adventures not for yourself but also for kids. And everything you do in life is kind of infused by things you've learned in books. If they were stories, there's usually a moral behind it or something that's person in the character trait that you can relate to, that you inspire to be. And
Mm.
so you look at yourself and you're like, I like the qualities of this character. I like the heroism displayed. And I too want to display this heroism in my life, even if it's something small, it's just, offering a kind hand to somebody. It does inspire you and change you, which in turn changes the world. And that is how the stories work. It's the magic in the words itself.
I'm getting a picture that I hadn't gotten before with what you said, because I loved Hardy Boy books when I was a kid. Now, I don't remember anything about what was in those books, but I love the fact that they were mysteries. And that's what I loved when I took my first job out of college. I became a certified public accountant. So it was the mystery of auditing different companies and going through their books and looking for things. But, it's like I never thought about that as a child. And yet that went deep within me. And so children, when they're listening to stories, now I'm getting a whole different thing. It's like I'm getting like, parents really need to be careful with the stories they read to their children, because those words are going in on very deep levels
Yes,
and
yes.
making very deep impacts on those children that are going to come out throughout their life. Um,
Oh
So,
yes, there's a saying in Afrikaans, which is a South African language, and I'll translate it for you. It says that you can only bend the tree until about, I think, 7 years old. And so basically that means is you as a parent have control and influence to help your child grow, your little tree, up until 7. Once you get past that age, it becomes it becomes more difficult to let it grow in a certain way. And so parents usually constantly buying books for their kids when they're smaller, but the choices of the books they give their kids will definitely impact them. And spending a moment bonding on the couch reading that story impacts them, like you say, on a deeper level. And
yes.
so when they grow up, and have kids of their own, they either going to remember the emotion, the feeling, the journey they had with their own parents and reflect it to the next generation, or they won't.
I don't think I did that consciously, but I do remember my mother reading to me, and I remember ordering books by mail at that point in time. So every month or every 2 weeks, I got books in the mail, and I couldn't wait to receive those. And again, I have no idea the type of book. I know I ran them by my mom, and she approved them. But yeah, and it's like not only do we as parents not have the ability to bend that tree so much after 6 or 7 years old, that tree trunk becomes very rigid as to getting any change put in it because what we instill is there. And I've actually heard and read studies where any people have a hard time changing as an adult. Like, for instance, we all sometimes want to change our diet or we want to adopt an exercise program. Well, if those things weren't put into us in the first 6 to 7 years of life, our whole being looks at those new changes like, oh my God, somebody's trying to kill me. Somebody's trying to put something in here that don't belong. And that's why we give up so often. So
Oh
that's,
yes.
yeah, so that's very true. Oh my goodness. What, in the time that we have left, besides sharing the free gift that you have, what's one thing you would like to really leave parents with?
It's great to have the babysitter as the TV. We've all done it. It saves us time. But the babysitter can also be the pencils, the coloring pencils, and a piece of paper. They can also be audiobooks. I
Mm,
think it's really important to allow a kid's imagination to bloom. Don't be afraid of letting them go outside in the garden and playing with mud. I mean, we all made mud balls, and it was fantastic to get your hands dirty and to imagine these great big pies. I think that is very key. Is For the next generation, I think it's important to get our imaginations flowing, to read, or in the case of technology, to listen to books and allow our brains to hear the words, hear these big words, and consciously change
mm,
our perspective and allow us to choose which perspective we want to go with.
I like that. Big words. It's like, don't be afraid to expose your children to big words. And even long stories. One I always picked out short stories for my daughter. They weren't these long things. And then I met this lady, and she read to her child every night. And when I met her, he was 6 years old, and she would read volumes. It's like it would take a week or a month to get through the story, and he liked that. He didn't have to have something real quick, kind of like the screens on the cell phones and everything, everything's instant gratification. So
Yeah.
even with a book, you can choose long stories. You can choose stories with words that maybe you don't even know there's a word or two, and then you get to look it up, and you as a parent get to share it with your child, and you get to investigate the meanings of words and try to figure out, oh, what's this author trying to tell me here?
And isn't it the best gratification when you in the book, in the middle, and you're having such a wonderful time, and you're just giggling out loud, and then somebody in the room is looking at you all weird, and you're like, yeah, but I'm in this complete fantasy world, and it feels amazing. And then you get to the end and you're so sad that it's finished, but then you're excited again because you get to pick another one.
And like Joseph Chilton Pierce said, that space where the child is in, listening in this imaginative world, it's literally forming the foundation for their entire life and doing things that we could never do. And they're just listening. And nature's process takes over, and it imagines and it sees and it creates. Oh, I wish we could spend more time together, Kelly. Would you like to share with everybody what your free gift is? I have it in the chat window, but maybe you'd like to say something about it.
Oh, most definitely. So one of the collections of the books we have is a collection of short stories from authors from around the world that wrote amazing, world-changing stories that will impact your kids' generations to come. And what I like about the gift that we're giving is you can go onto my website and you can download free printable activities that can be used from age 6 all the way to age 12, and kids can write their own brave story. They can contact one of the authors if they want to and write to them. They can
Wow.
color in, they can draw themselves, and it's free. You can download it, you can get it with the good book. You don't have to get it with the book. It all connects very beautifully with these stories from around the world.
Oh, wow. Having a chapter in one of those beautiful books. God, would I love nothing than to have a child contact me regarding my chapter.
Yeah.
That would be so amazing. So thank you so much, Kelly, for being here. Thank you so much for being in this world and sharing your love and light. And in addition to the gift that Kelly has for you, I have two gifts for you. Also in the chat window, one of them is how to get a solid yes or no so that every decision you make is foolproof. You'll know it's the right decision. And there's also a guided exercise audio on 10 exercises that will empower you and your children. And you can just go to timothystuetz.com and click the freebie tab, and there's many more things for you. Thank you for listening and being with us. Stay tuned for episode 12 with Jackie Bailey as we discover the brilliance of communicating effectively with kids and teens. And with all my blessings for peace, love, vibrant health, and bliss wrapped in an infinite rainbow of miraculous, magical miracles for you, your children, and your family. Aloha and mahalo for tuning in, for being here now. Be and radiate the divine light, the aloha, the brilliance you are.